After 5 weeks, 5 long weeks, 5 dastardly long weeks, which still feels like an eternity. Is Bitcoin ready to move? Well, some of the lowest volatility levels that we've seen actually on this asset ever, plus a few signals that we should start off right off the bat on this video we're going to be focusing on, and that is the topic of today. Essentially, why, if Bitcoin fails to move to the upside this week, then the probabilities, the favor will massively shift in the barrel's direction. And I expect that is a good place to start. We'll just jump right into the charts for today, starting off with the weekly right here. And we can see that on the weekly for CME to begin with, which is going to be closing Friday, if Bitcoin fails to get back above 30,600, we will see weekly stochastic momentum turn on to the downside, essentially getting rejected at the critical zone, thus creating regular bearish divergence actually coming off of the April highs right here. So with that in mind, and combining that with extreme lows on the volatility reads that we see down here, that would be a setup for more prolonged downside, perhaps even coming all the way back down to test this trendline regression over time, which would be somewhere around the neutral zone actually, depending upon where it kind of approaches from. Of course, if we go ahead and look at spot price action, a little bit different numbers as you can see, but it also closed on a different date as well, by the way. It closed on Sunday rather than Friday. But this one would be showing 29,900 as the current weekly momentum pivot. Same sort of analysis here, right? You do have that bearish or that potential for bearish divergence. You do have a potential rejection right at the critical zone, and that very, 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 very low volatility coming off of extreme lows right there. That combined with the weekly look over here, we can see that if Bitcoin does, once again stall this week and especially close below 29,550, there will be RSI, regular bearish divergence as well, to kind of put the icing on the cake, I suppose. So as always, no, this has not been always true, but in this particular region, in this particular range, still 29,500 remains that lower boundary, meaning that if Bitcoin starts to close below there, very likely we do start to see those things confirmed, and probably takes over sooner rather than later. Until then, boo laws have this week, and we would be expecting to see them make a push, very specifically above at least 30,000 bucks, to remain having that chance in their favor in the more near term. If that fails to happen, then very likely we do see a little bit more of a prolonged correction to the downside coming off of this. Now, speaking of corrections, I do want to once again revisit the NASDAQ analysis that we had. I guess coming off of like the last couple of months, we were looking at a target somewhere around 16,000 bucks in this blue box territory right here. I'll get rid of the LARP lines for right now. And that has been hit, which is great for traditional markets. Of course, the reason why I bring this up is because there has been a strong correlation between Bitcoin and traditional markets, typically speaking, over the dawn of history for Bitcoin in this case. And if traditional markets are more likely to play out a pullback from hitting a major region like this, what does that mean for Bitcoin? Well, it means that Bitcoin could be potentially doing the same thing as well. Looking at it right here, long term, I want to reiterate my thoughts that still I would be bullish on this long term, similar to Bitcoin long term, but a pullback from this region can very easily come down all the way to 14,300, 14,400, where the yellow 21 exponential moving average is, and it would still just be another higher low. It could even come all the way down to 13,800 and same thing. So in this case, what is it going to look like if we do see something like this? Maybe get a small bounce there on the LARP lines and then try an upside move, or maybe it goes a little bit further south and then tries an upside move, something like that. What is it going to look like for Bitcoin? Well, if we go ahead and look at the correlation coefficient over here, which I've mapped out over the past few years, we can see that generally speaking, or just over the history, generally speaking, Bitcoin and NASDAQ have had a pretty strong positive correlation. And the times that it has decorrelated or even had a negative correlation, those have been very quickly reverted back into positive correlations. And as we can see in the past few years here, there seems to be a pretty obvious relationship where NASDAQ moves first completes it, or I wouldn't say completes this move, but after, it's been moving for a while, then Bitcoin gets picked on up. So I'll bring you to this first example that I have mapped out here in 2018. We can see a decorrelation while Bitcoin essentially trades sideways and down. This was the $20,000 all-time high in 2018, where traditional markets continued upwards and onwards. Then they positively correlated again once both of them went down in great unison to the lows of 2018, essentially. At which point, we do see some choppy action here, generally positively correlated. But the next big one that we do see is coming off of the 2019 summer. So that was the $14,000 highs that Bitcoin went to on that first major rally, right? And after that, and both of them rallied about the same time. And then after that, Bitcoin again traded sideways and down into the Rona dump. Same thing with traditional markets here too, or it kind of traded sideways and up, and then the Rona dump, at which point they positively correlated. So again, it seems to be that Nasdaq is the first mover, Bitcoin follows. So if this relationship does hold true, well, you can fill in the blanks there. Same thing over here in March 2021. Again, traditional markets were sideways and up, just basically just up. Bitcoin was sideways and down in this case, coming off of March 2021. That was the summer, or leading into the summer slump. And then what do you know after that? Again, positively correlated as they both dumped in a very vicious fashion from November 2021 to the lows of what we did see kind of into what was it, like fall of last year, and several other instances, as you can see. So again, we are seeing this decorrelation or a lowering of the positive correlation, not necessarily a decorrelation just yet, but a significant, I would say, kind of disconnection right here. And so while traditional markets did continue upwards and onwards, Bitcoin has been more or less going sideways. And in this case, if we do start to see this one go down, what does that mean? What is that going to mean for Bitcoin? Probably comes down with it. So I would be looking at this as a bit of a harbinger of potential issues maybe coming into like later this summer. Perhaps the general pre-halving correction that we spoke about in yesterday's video happens earlier this time than not. Definitely possible. But until then, this week still is a very, very big one, because if Bitcoin does continue from here, then I'd be looking for, big moves into the deeper $30,000 territory minimum. Not like at the same tick, obviously, but, into the end of the year perhaps, and then, the big correction to come a little bit after that. Anyways, I'll bring you over here and end on the HPDR ranges. Just kind of make this one a little bit on the shorter side. We can see the ranges have been slowly marched down now. The 4-hour time frame range lows coming in at 29,200, and the range highs coming in at 30,000, below 30,800 actually, which was rather interesting in my opinion. If we go over here to the daily, what can we see? We can see the daily range lows coming in at that 28,250-ish region. So I would be saying that if you do start to see the 4-hour range lows break, we're probably going to see the daily range lows tested again in those lower 28s. Until then, I would still be saying the same thing as last week, that if Bitcoin can even just trade above basically last week's high, or was this last week's high? Yeah, this was last week's high. Then I would be looking for a retest of 31,300, something like that. If that were to happen. Until then, still more or less range bound. Sideways, however, is going to start to be less kind to the BULAs here, as momentum is going to start to shift around if continuation is not had this week. So that's going to be probably a big thing that I focus on throughout this week. Basically above 30,000, good. Below 30,000, bad. If you want just a 1 second soundbite right there. Other than that, probably a good time to just let you go, as this market's been fucking boring enough already, isn't it? So I figure it's a good time to prepare for this next big move, because very likely a big move is coming. But at the same time, man, 5 weeks fucking sideways, 5 weeks sideways, 5 weeks sideways. What the actual hell? What are we doing here? 5 weeks sideways. I'm trying to think of like a more boring time in Bitcoin's history, and actually I can definitely think of one. It wasn't even that long ago. It was back on over here in November and December. But how long was this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But things felt more interesting during that time. Like crypto Twitter felt alive, crypto YouTube felt alive. I guess like people were interested just because of like all of the FTX stuff going on over there. I'm trying to think of an even worse time. Maybe actually coming off of the 2019 lows over here. Yeah, this was pretty bad. And also right before the breakdown in 2018. Yeah, these were some pretty nasty times. I would say they're pretty damn comparable, actually, in terms of just general interest. Obviously not in terms of price action, because Bitcoin's been more or less, up. But even with Bitcoin at $30,000, 2x, more than a 2x off the lows, seems like things are dead. Seems like the interest is completely dead. So I think the good place for me to be leaving off. Again, big week this week. I do expect that this is going to be the week where we do start to see, a direction chosen, which I don't believe I've said over the past 2 to 3 weeks now. So I do feel quite confident. It's either this week, maybe next. If it's next week, it's probably going to be bearish, actually. All right, fair enough. That's a good place for me to be leaving off. As always, wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully Tuesday.